Shalom, it is Rabbi Bolton continuing what we began yesterday. We began yesterday a discourse of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he made in 1976, Tafshin Lamed Vav, about the holiday of Sukkot. Exactly what is Sukkot from God's point of view? And why does God want the Jewish people to sit in a sukkah? Sukkah is like this booth that has foliage on the top of it that was cut off. And what is exactly the purpose of it? So if we remember, the Rebbe said that the whole idea of the Jewish people is to make peace in the world, shalom. And making peace in the world essentially means that people feel the Creator. And they feel that they're being created. Shalom. And that this is accomplished by in the holiday of Sukkot. So in a general way, what he said is that God is incomprehensible. And the fact is that God is not even in the category of being incomprehensible. Incomprehensible means like you might be able to understand him, but he's just, too much for me. I just can't understand. It's just too much. But that means it's in the category of understanding. It's just that I can't, or a human being can't grasp it. But in fact, God he creates all understanding. So it's totally out of the category of being able to understand God. In the language that's used in Kabbalah and Chassidut, that's called a makif. Makif means a surrounding level. So that is symbolized by the Sukkah. Sukkah surrounds us, encompasses us. And true, it commemorates the fact that when the Jews left Egypt, God surrounded them with clouds and protected them, etc. But that also is not understandable. If you think about it, why does God care? What did God, enough that he created the world, he recreates the world. Why does he care about one people? And so that's, like we said before, that he creates the world all the time, that's incomprehensible. That only can be grasped by faith. But that God cares about every detail, that's even beyond that. That's even beyond me. So that's the job of the Jewish people, is to make the whole world realize that this God who is above being incomprehensible is creating everybody. And he cares about everybody. And that's the holiday of Sukkot. So it says, how is this accomplished? It says, and remember we started this yesterday. The Sukkot is the idea of a makif, of a surrounding level, a surrounding reality of God. It says, it says that in Psalms, it says, Tiku b'yom b'chodesh shofar, b'chesed liyom chagenu. It's in Psalm 81. It says, you sound the shofar in the beginning of the month. That's Rosh Hashanah. B'chesed, and it is, the word b'chesed means a lot of things. It means like a special day, but it also means to be covered. Mechusek, to be covered. So you sound the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, but the result of that shofar, what it does, what the level of godliness that it evokes from God's will is b'chesed, it's covered. And it's covered, liyom, it's covered up. You can't, liyom chaginu, until the day of our rejoicing, which that's Sukkot. Sukkot is called Chag, Simchatenu. Chagenu, that's Sukkot. The kol inyanim, that everything which was mechasa, which was bekisa, which was covered in the days before Yom Chagenu, which is Sukkot, Midgalim, they're revealed in the holiday of Sukkot. And when God is revealed, what's the result? Happiness. People feel happy. People feel good. They feel happy. They feel fortunate. They're being created. And they're being created not just by their parents or by atoms or by forces of nature or whatever. They're being created every moment by God. And which means we're in pretty good hands. Huh? And then, of course, you can have a lot of questions on that, but that's the fact. So on Sukkot, all the things that were aroused by our service of God, sounding the shofar and fasting on Yom Kippur, or the high priest going into the Holy of Holies and lighting the incense over there, that aroused certain godly aspects in the upper worlds, but they were only aroused, when they're revealed on the holiday of Sukkot. We'll come over, for instance, again, we did this yesterday. Shofar, like the shofar of Rosh Hashanah. It's a mitzvah, it's a yom, that the commandment of the day of Rosh Hashanah is to sound the shofar. That's the big holiday. That's the big commandment of the holiday. Hubo, the sounding of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah comes in a revealed way, Yom Chagenu, on Sukkot, where in the schach of the sukkah, in the covering, the foliage that's on the roof of the sukkah. The Zelmaz Schach, that's what the schach of the sukkah is. Hakatuv schach, mashma the dofen loikri schach. That the schach, the covering of the sukkah, that's really the sukkah. That's really the sukkah. The walls are not the sukkah that we said. The holiday of Sukkot is to sit underneath this foliage that we cut off. There have to be 4 walls, but the walls are not the main thing. The walls are just basically there to give us boundaries. But the main thing is to sit under the schach. The word schach is the numerical value of 100. Keneged mea kolot, and this corresponds to the 100 shofar sounds that are sounded on Rosh Hashanah. We went over this yesterday. And also the individual sounds that we make from the shofar, the tekiah, there is 60 of them altogether. Of the 100 shofar blasts that we sound, 60 of them are the duh, that comes before and after each set. And then in the middle, there is 20 shvorim, duh, duh, duh. There's 20 sets of those 3, duh, 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 duh. That's done 20 times. And 20 truos, that's done also 20 times. And before each one, there's a tekiah and another tekiah. So it goes duh, and then something in the middle, duh, 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 and then there's duh. So it comes out together that there's 60 duh straight blasts. That's called a tekiah. And there's 20 shvorim, duh, 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 and 20 truos, duh, 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 duh. So that's exactly the number of schach. Schach. Also regarding the incense of Yom Kippur, it's revealed B'Yom Chagenu on Sukkot. Like it says, it's known that the schach of the sukkah, the covering of the sukkah, this foliage on the roof of the sukkah, it is made spiritually from the cloud of the incense of Yom Kippur. Like we said yesterday, the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies and he would put this incense on the coals and it would fill the whole room up with smoke. And that smoke was something like the smoke that it says that Moses went into the Anan, into the cloud, when he went on Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. The Av Yom Kippurim, even the Yom Kippurim, already there is, things are already revealed to a certain degree, but the main thing of being covered is in the beginning of the month, right? The beginning of the month, also the moon, the Jewish people are compared to the moon. So the beginning of every month, it's what do we call it? A new moon. In other words, there's just a sliver of a moon there. The moon is concealed. In the middle of the month, the moon is full. That's the holiday of Sukkot. But 5 days before that, the moon was almost full. That was the holiday of Yom Kippur. So the moon symbolizes the revelation of the Jewish people in the world, the godliness that comes through the Jewish people into the world. That's represented by the moon. So the beginning of the month, there's no moon. It shows that there's no revelation of the godliness, the blessing which comes from the Jews. And Yom Kippur, there's much more. The moon is almost full. Nevertheless, the revelation of the moon and the godliness, the blessing of the Jewish people, and the main thing is still up in the upper worlds, which is not the case Sukkot. In Sukkot, the revelation is total and it's full below until it comes into the actual physical covering of the sukkah, which comes from the cloud of this incense on Yom Kippur, and then we can actually see it. When the high priest made this smoke, it was only in the Holy of Holies. It came out, but it was only in the Holy of Holies. It didn't come out of the Holy of Holies. It came out of the incense, right? The incense, he put it on the coals, and it filled up with smoke, but no one saw the smoke except for the Kohen. We can also say like this. So what was the Rebbe talking about? The purpose of the Jewish people is to reveal a blessing of life in the world, to reveal that God is creating everything and that God is infinitely good and that God is everywhere, to reveal this. And in order to do that, it can only be by arousing God's will, which that's only in the Torah. God said, do these things, which is what I want. When you reveal what I want, then God says, I'm pleased. When I'm pleased, this revelation comes out. So Rosh Hashanah, we start doing what God wants. We sound the shofar. By the way, Rosh Hashanah was the day that the first man was created, right? 5,784 years ago, in a few days. Man was created. So that was Rosh Hashanah. Everything was there, but in potential. Yom Kippur, and that's the day that the high priest went into the Holy of Holies. Everything was more revealed. Godliness was more revealed, but still was mostly revealed in the Holy of Holies. On Sukkot, this revelation comes out. In other words, people feel that they're being created. People can feel that there's a creator that loves them and that they're here for a purpose. The Yeshlom, we can say that the beginning of this revelation, of this feeling of the creator, is in the days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, the days we're in now. So as then, as a preparation for the Sukkah, we build the Sukkah, and we buy the lulav and etrog. Hainu should be a mimelu that in these days, this is a preparation in the beginning of drawing down of the revelations, the things that we began on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The main thing up above, it was still, these revelations were still in the upper worlds. That's why Sukkah is a makif. So idea of Sukkah is to reveal godliness in the world, but it reveals it in this surrounding way. Hina hefresh, the difference between the ketoret and the korbanot, that's the difference between the ketoret and the incense of Yom Kippur and the korbanot and the sacrifices on Sukkot. Like we said before, we make 70 oxes, we sacrifice. What's the difference? We say korbanot, it says lachmi ishai. The sacrifices, they are bread for my fire. That's what God says. The lechem winyan panini, that bread is something that goes inside of you. And there are some of the sacrifices that are also eaten by the kohanim, by the priests. The korbanos ne'achalim gam lebalim, and there's some sacrifices that go inside even the person who brings them, like the peace offerings and the free will offerings. They're also eaten by the owners. So that's the idea of the korbanos, they go inside, which is not the case the ketoret, which is not the case the incense, especially on Yom Kippur. This does not really go inside. True, it has a smell to it, and the smell does affect you very deeply, but not permanently. This is a makif. This is what's called the surrounding, the incense. And therefore also the revelation on Yom Chaginu, the revelation of this incense was for Sukkot. And on Sukkot, what is revealed, the essence of what the incense is, which we said the incense is a surrounding level, so it's hidden on Yom Kippur, and on Sukkot, the surrounding level becomes revealed. We're in the surrounding of the Sukkah. We're going to see in a moment that the lulav and etrog, that brings it down into our heart. But we'll talk about this a little bit more practically, but let's continue. And since that the incense was only done in the Holy of Holies, that that's really far above our understanding. Therefore, the surrounding level of the Sukkah which was drawn down from the cloud of the incense of Yom Kippur, this is a higher level, a surrounding level than a garment. Garment also surrounds us. And it hasn't got any divisions. Until it surrounds all of our body, including garments. We talked about this a little bit before. But the Jewish people were God's people. Our job is to reveal God in the world. What happens when God is revealed in the world? What happens? When God is revealed in the world, so there's more positivity in the world. There's more health in the world. There's peace, there's prosperity, and everyone's potential can be revealed. Everyone feels that they're being created. That's an aspect of God that's a little bit sort of close to understanding. That's what we said before. That's like the surrounding level of a garment. That's a metaphor for that would be a garment. In other words, if it surrounds you, doesn't go inside like food, like the Torah goes inside. It surrounds you, but it surrounds you in a close way. You can sort of understand it. I mean, God creates me. We talked about this a couple of days ago. God creates me, but then there's what's called far away, that God is totally, totally above understanding. And this aspect of God, even the biggest, the holiest genius and the most simple child have the same awareness of God. Just simply put, God creates everybody. Same God that creates Moses creates, a rock. So this is totally incomprehensible, what God is creating, all these differences, but nevertheless, all is the same. They're just all creations to God. That far away feeling of God, in a way, that's genuinely what God is. Totally beyond even the category of comprehension. That's represented by the Sukkah. How it is that the Sukkah embraces us from head to foot, and that every aspect of our being is important. Now, this starts with the Jewish people, but the goal is, and Abraham began that goal, he was called the father of all mankind, that all mankind will see this and feel it. Okay, and that's for, we have how many, let's see, paragraphs there are in this? There are 11, I think, 11. Okay, so we'll do 2 more. We'll see, we'll get as much done as we can. That's what it, and this is the connection of the Sukkah with peace. That's a connection of a Sukkah with peace. So we see that the Sukkah triggers off all of these revelations of our Creator. It triggers off a connection to the source of life. But it's totally incomprehensible, beyond being incomprehensible. That's why it's a surrounding level. But we're talking about ultimate reality. We're not talking about the upper worlds and getting out of the world and going up to heaven or something. Get these spiritual revelations or something. Going on a mountain. I mean, I'm not trying to knock those things. If you want to do that, it's okay. But that's not what Judaism is. Judaism is to bring all these big revelations down here, and even greater revelations, because those revelations of godliness that are in the upper worlds are not as great as revelations of godliness that can come down here. It's like a mad professor. He has to keep away from everybody. But a person who's really a great professor, he can even give classes and explain his ideas, come down. It's the same thing, that aspect of God that comes into the world, that's a tremendously high level of godliness, and that can only be done through Sukkah. And that's why the Sukkah is the idea of peace. Like it says, Poreis Olenu Sukkah Shalomecha, we say in the prayers of Shabbat, spread over us the Sukkah, your canopy of peace. The Ma'achah, since that the Sukkah is an union of Makiv, since the Sukkah is an aspect of the God, our Creator, in a way that's impossible to understand, above understand, and nevertheless he is creating us, he's embracing us That's what Sukkah is. It's this high level, which is incomprehensibly high, but it's surrounding us. It's creating us. Therefore, since it's drawn down, this high level of encompassing level of godliness is drawn into the Sukkah, so that makes this encompassing godliness available to the world, and that's peace. Now, Shalom, there's made peace between the godly soul and the animal soul, and also peace between all of the levels of the godly soul itself. Because why? The Sukkah encompasses all aspects of man from his head until his feet. Therefore, by means of the Sukkah can be peace in everything in man. I'll give you an example. I don't know if this is a good example, but I'll give you an example. Let's say we're on the Titanic, right? We're on the Titanic, and there are, I don't know how many people were on the Titanic. Let's say 5,000 people on the Titanic, and everybody hates everybody else. They all hate everyone else. Everyone can't stand. They're all from different nations, and they're different races, and they're different religions, and they just do not get along at all. They just can't stand one another. They can't be in the same lunchroom. They have to eat lunch one after the other. They're always arguing, always fighting. All of a sudden, someone says, the ship is sinking. Oh, so now we have to save our lives. How are we going to do it? So all of a sudden, one person, from whatever's Bavaria, he helps an old lady from Slobavia. And so a guy from Slobavia, so he helps an old lady from Bavaria, and then someone from this other country. And all of a sudden, in order to save their lives, so all of a sudden, when life is at stake, they make peace between each other, helping each other, because it's life, it's reality. And they're helping each other, right? There's enough, let's say, the lifeboats to go along, so they're helping everybody, and they're not fighting. Because life is at stake. That's what we're talking about in Sukkah, but in a good way. In Sukkot, we reveal the source of life. And therefore, because everybody feels we're lucky just to be alive, we're lucky to be created. So 99% of our egotism and our selfishness and our, anxieties dissipate. They go away. We're concentrated on one thing, life. But in a good way, the source of our life. And that's why, by means of the Sukkah, has made peace in the whole world. If you do like a son that the Sukkah, this is something like Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark. Now, where they got the word ark from, I have absolutely no idea. I never really looked it up. As far as I know, there's no such word as an ark. You ever see an ark? Go into a store, say, I'd like an ark, please. And what are you talking about? What's an ark? I think it could be, but maybe I'm making a mistake, that every language in the world does not recognize that word ark. I don't know. Maybe it's just a joke. But in any case, Noah's Ark, it was called the Tevat Noah. The Teva means the box. I guess it's not nice to say that Noah went into a chest or a box. So we'll keep calling it an ark, okay? This is the idea of Noah's Ark. Wait a second. Noah's Ark, right? Now, what was in Noah's Ark? What was there? That in Noah's Ark, there was peace. Noah's Ark was, it was a pretty bizarre thing, Noah's Ark, if you think about it. It wasn't that big. The thing was not that big. And they had like 2 elephants and 2 giraffes and 2 hippopotamuses and 2 rhinoceroses. How they got those things in there. And somehow or other, they did not make war with each other. There was peace. The Avshaya B'Teva, even though they were all, these animals were all together, nevertheless, that they did not do any bad or destruction to one the other. Something like the peace that's going to be in the future. It also says over there, the prophecy of Isaiah, that people are much worse than animals, right? I mean, like the Germans did things that you get all the scorpions and the lions in the world. They couldn't do such dangerous things, like such destructive things. Anyways, people, it says the animals won't destroy one another. That's one of the things of Moshiach. Moshiach is going to make this world perfect. Those people that say Moshiach is going to come and take people away and that everybody's going to go up to heaven and we're going to, that's a big lie. In general, that whole Christianity is a big lie. But that's just one of the many big lies that's been told. The fact is Moshiach is going to make this world, this physical world, into the place that it was one before Adam ate from the tree, perfect, higher than heaven. If Adam had not eaten from the tree, there would be no heaven. People wouldn't die. It would just be in this world. It would be. In any case, a preface to that is the revelation of God, which shows how wonderful and bountiful this physical world is, so that the lo yeru, that the animals won't even eat up each other. Even though that the surrounding level of a sukkah is only what's called Kabbalah. Here's what Kabbalah says. Is only chitzoniut bina. It's only the external level of bina of God's understanding, and the Tevat Noach was an internal level of this bina of God, this understanding of God. That the sukkah. So we sit in a sukkah. That's external, surrounding level. Noah's Ark was much deeper than that. That was bina. I mean, we sit in a sukkah also. There's this surrounding level. I do not advise you to bring like wild bears or lions into your sukkah. If you do it, don't tell anybody that I told you to. And also make sure that I'm not there, because it's not going to work in your sukkah this year. I mean, but nevertheless, the fact is that the sukkah has something like the same revelation as in Noah's Ark. But in the future, Yelamaila, it'll be even higher than this aspect that was in Noah's Ark. What's called Panimiyut Bina, the inside of God's understanding, like it was in its place. Okay, but then it'll be like the inside of Bina in its place, higher than even Noah's Ark. Good. Nevertheless, the peace which is in this sukkah that we have right now, it's something like the peace, the revelation of godliness that's going to be in the future. Whereas what we get now when we sit in the sukkah is a little bit of a revelation, which is even higher than Noah's Ark, like it's going to be in the Noah's Ark was only in Noah's Ark. In the future, it's going to be the whole entire world is going to be this peace. Kiatam, the lo yeru, because the reason in Noah's Ark that the animals did not do bad or destroy one another is because of dat. No. Also, the same thing in Noah's Ark. In the future, the reason that there's not going to be any wars and that the animals won't even kill each other is because there's going to be what's called dat. Dat. Dat means realization. Realization. Ukamo, and like, let's see, background over here. Here we go. Ukamo, Shasam, like it says, Ki Mala ha'oretz deya et Hashem. Maimonides brings this in the end. The world will be filled with the realization of God. Whereas people will feel that God is more real than money. God is more real than our life. He's creating our life. So this is a revelation which is even higher than it was in Noah's Ark. And therefore, also the surrounding level of the sukkah that we're sitting in right now, that its whole thing of Lama'an dat, Yedu, in order that you should know. Here, let's go back to our original. Here we go. Let's go back to the mind. Here it says, Laman Yedu, in order that the future generation should know that I am sitting you in sukkahs. So what does it mean? That we have to realize, to feel the godliness which is in the sukkah. That's dat. And this will cause peace in the world, like in the future. And especially, listen, let's take the example of money, right? You go to people that are making war with each other, and you say, let's say two people are fighting. Say, I'll give you $5,000 each to stop fighting. Right? If you fight, I'm not going to give you any more. People would, generally speaking, they would stop. Right? Kids that are arguing, If you stop arguing, I'll give each one a candy. They stop. Right? When people feel that they're getting some sort of a reward which is above the pleasure that they might get from victory, so they stop fighting. Well, that's what's going to be in the future. Everyone will feel the source of life. And when they do that, it'll be like sort of bribery to stop fighting. But even more, the reason that people fight with each other, do bad, is because they're empty inside. When a person feels satisfied inside, he doesn't make war with other people. And in the days of the Moshiach, people will feel like the animals felt in Noah's Ark. They were satisfied. They were happy to be alive. They were lucky. They didn't have to kill anybody else. They were happy with what they had. It says the world will be filled with the awareness, the knowledge of God. Therefore, the surrounding level of the sukkah that you should know, this will bring about this peace now, which is something like the peace in the future. Of course, takes a certain amount of belief, and even if it doesn't take belief, I mean, you can give a poor person $1 million, but if he doesn't want the money, so he'll remain a poor person. Give him $1 million, and he'll give it away to his friends or just keep fishing around in the garbage cans. So we have to want this revelation, but the Rebbe is trying to explain to us that it is available every sukkot. Well, befrat in sukkot, and the sukkah also in the sukkah itself, and especially according to what it says in the connection of this schach, the covering of the sukkah regarding the incense of Yom Kippur, that the whole thing is the level of atik, a tremendously high spiritual level, that's the whole idea of the holiday of Yom Kippur. How does God forgive all of our sins on Yom Kippur? Because he gets to a level of purity that was never affected by the sins. And that's the cloud of incense, which was in the Holy of Holies. It's a level of godliness which is above any possibility of bad or selfishness or egotism. In Kabbalah, that's called atik. It's the inner level of God's crown. But Bechinas Bina, on the level of Bina, also the external Bina, this is a revelation of atik. That's this Itgalut atik, the revelation of atik is in Bina. So we're saying that the sukkah is like this level of Bina, and in it is this level of atik. In other words, what we're talking about is deeper and deeper and deeper levels of God's love and reality and life force. This level of atik, when it's revealed in the schach of the sukkah, this makes peace. Suddenly you realize that you're not alone, that it's okay, you don't have to worry, you don't have to be uptight, that you have to appreciate what you're getting from the Creator, and you have to appreciate being able to express your unique potential, what you have to contribute to the world. Therefore, the sukkah is called Sukkah Shalomecha. So Sukkot then is, in general, is the feeling that God personally is creating, enlivening, and embracing us, hugging us from all sides, and that gives us peace. Okay, but the idea of all these surrounding levels and these Kabbalistic levels we're talking about, this is in order that it should come down into our day-to-day life. And that happens by means of taking the four, meaning the lulav and the etrog, and bringing it to our heart. To taking these things into our day-to-day life, into our heart, and this is what we're going to discuss, God willing, tomorrow or the next opportunity that I have to record. So realize what's going on. When you sit in that sukkah, it's a circus going on. All of the upper worlds are churning around, and they're all being revealed down here for us. It's available. We just have to open our eyes and our minds and our hearts and appreciate. Have a good day with Moshiach now. God willing, we'll continue soon. Chag Sameach, everybody. Happy holiday. With dancing with the Moshiach, the Rebbe should come immediately like it was back then. Remember, the Rebbe would take his lulav and etrog and shake. Amazing revelations, happiness there was back then. It'll be nothing like the happiness in the future redemption, which is supposed to happen right now. It's supposed to happen years ago. Shalom Avracha. See you soon.